Good evening. I hate to break up all the great sounding conversation that I hear going on out there, but we have a big event tonight. This is our 32nd annual Peace Studies Conference. I'm Jeff Anderson, the chair of the Peace Studies Department, and you'll be happy to know I have a very limited role tonight. All right, that is to thank our sponsors, our organizers, and then to step aside as quickly as possible so we can get on to the main event. Our Peace Studies Department has been blessed with students, faculty, staff, monastics, and panelists that have been eager to share their experience and enthusiasm in the creation of today's events. This year, we are joined in co-sponsorship with what I believe is a record number of co-sponsors for us for our conference. And they are in no particular order, but all much appreciated. The Climate Action Club, the Environmental Studies Department, CSB Sustainability, the Sociology Department, Intercultural and International Student Services, the Gender Studies Department, the Institute for Women's Leadership, the McCarthy Center for Public Policy, the Mellon Grant, and the Minnesota Humanities Commission, who supplied the Why Treaties Matter exhibit, which is at Clemens Library right now. And I believe it'll be there through the end of the month, close to the end of the month. At least a few weeks anyhow. So you should get a chance to see that if you're in Clemens Library. The leadership and the vision for this conference, aside from the choice of the dessert cake tonight for those of you who got to enjoy dinner, that was mine. The rest goes to Dr. Ted Gordon, Dr. Corey Gross, and Dr. Kelly Kramer. Hold on, we're gonna do all the applause at once. But unbelievable logistical support was provided by Sheila Hellerman. Sheila, right by the back door there. She will be valeting your cars at the end of the night as well. All right, so given our crowd, it could be a little while till we're out of here. But really amazing support. So now at this time, if you join me in thanking them and also in welcoming CSB student Melissa Burrell, who will be introducing tonight's speaker. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for joining us for the 32nd Annual Peace Studies Conference here at CSB SJU. And I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, Winona LaDuke. Before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge that the land we gather on today is the original homeland of the Dakota and Anishinaabe peoples. We honor and respect the indigenous peoples who were forcibly removed from and who are still connected to this territory. There are over 20 Native and Indigenous students who are at our schools from different nations. St. Ben's Monastery and St. John's Abbey used to operate boarding schools for Native children, which facilitated cultural erasure. Now, students, faculty, and staff are working to repair relationships with our Native neighbors. There are well over 35,000 Indigenous peoples living in the Twin Cities metro area, including a diversity of nations. Centuries of genocide and forced assimilation have created a range of challenges for Indigenous peoples. This Peace Studies Conference opens a space to discuss ways in which we can support Indigenous peoples in our area and enact a reparations framework, a framework that works to return the land to the Native people. And now I'd like to introduce Winona LaDuke. Winona is an internationally renowned environmental and a political activist, although, as she would prefer to say, a responsible citizen, because why would wanting clean water consider yourself an activist? A two-time vice president candidate with the Green Party's Ralph Nader in 1996 and in 2000, LaDuke lives and works on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. She is a graduate of Harvard and of Antioch Universities. Winona has earned a number of awards, including being inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2007 and was nominated by Time magazine as one of America's most 50 promising leaders. LaDuke is also the founder of the White Earth Land Recovery Project, one of the reservation's one of the largest reservation-based nonprofit organizations in the country. The project is a leader in the issues of culturally based sustainable development strategies, renewable energy, and food systems. It received the 2003 International Slow Food Award for Biodiversity, recognizing the organization's work to protect wild rice from patenting and genetic engineering. Winona is also the program and director and founder of Honor the Earth, working on the issues of climate change, renewable energy, and of course, environmental justice with Indigenous communities. Currently, Honor the Earth's primary campaign is the resistance to the Line 3 tar sands pipeline proposed to travel through northern Minnesota and which jeopardizes wild rice lakes and native sovereignty. Honor also works to raise awareness around missing and murdered Indigenous women, which are two topics she plans on touching on today. In addition to the resistance work, Honor the Earth is also engaged in building a world we all want to see. It is pioneering sustainable textile hemp production in Minnesota and employing White Earth's members at the 8th Fire Solar, which is their new solar thermal panel manufacturing facility. Winona is someone who I look up to, someone who personally deeply inspires me. It is an honor to have her here on this campus and in front of us. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Winona LaDuke.
Hi, thank you so much for the very gracious welcome here and my wonderful day I've had. I was trying to remember when I was here last. I don't think I was quite here, but I was somewhere around here, and it was last century, right? Nice to come back. I had a nice drive down here, and just grateful to be here. Winona Leduc, that means hello, my relatives. Benesi Kwe Indigenous, Makwan Dodem, Gababani Kagish Kaniganing and Dunjaba Miigwech. I'm greeting you in Anishinaabe Moan, which I think you gathered, and I'm telling you that I'm Bear Clan, Thunderbird Woman, and I'm from White Earth. And again, very grateful to be here with you today. I am also a water protector. That's what I am, and that's what I consider myself to be, which I think is a really good idea for all of us at some basic level. And this is a water protector. This woman here is a water protector, and for those of you who know our territory, you know that the stories of missing and murdered women are prevalent throughout a lot of northern Minnesota into the Dakotas. And many of our women, are not seen, and a lot of times Native women we aren't really recognized as being there. Well, this woman is about 20 feet wide and 40 feet tall, and she's in downtown Duluth on 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue. And so she's quite present. She's a water protector, and we're very proud of our part. The artist's name's Votan, and I'm very proud of our work in that, in supporting him. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things. First, I want to talk about this month. In Anishinaabe Moan, this month is called Mano Minike Gizis, which means the wild rice-making moon. It's followed by a moon called Watbaga Gizis, which is when the leaves change color. Then Banakweo Gizis, when the leaves fall. Then we have a Gosh Kadno Gizis, that's around November. Freezing over moon. Manitou Gizis Soons, Little Spirit Moon, Gishi Manitou Gizis, Great Spirit Moon. Mabana Gizis, Sucker Moon. One of my favorite moons is Unabana Gizis, which means the hard-crusted snow moon. That's around March. Also the moon you don't want to do a face plant in the snow. All right, maple syruping moon, Wabagana Gizis, a flower moon, Odamina Gizis, strawberry moon, Mean Gizis, blueberry moon. I thought that I would, you might like to hear the names for this place. There's names for this land, Oma'aki. That's the calendar of the Anishinaabe. And did y'all notice that none of those moons is named after a Roman emperor? See? It's possible to have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with empire. It's okay. Just let that stuff go. It's not helpful. Just a little note on that one. So I want to talk about this time and this moment in time, and I want to start also by talking about this treaty that occurred, an agreement that occurred between our people, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee, or the Six Nations. And it's called the One Dish, One Spoon Treaty. And it was signed, they say, around 1712 in Montreal. It was an agreement, and it was carried forth and remembered in what's called a wampum belt. Any of you hear of these things before, wampum belt? So it's called the One Dish, One Spoon Wampum, the One Dish, One Spoon Treaty. And it was an agreement made between our two nations, large nations, about what we said is that we all shared the same hunting territories. That was our dish. That was our dish, that we all shared the same dish. And we needed to be mindful, since we all shared the same dish, to care for that dish. And then the one spoon is that when you share your spoon with someone, you become relatives, when you share your feast with them. And so it was 1712, this agreement made between our peoples to look out for each other, to consider each other as relatives, and to understand that we all eat with one dish, and we all have one spoon. And I think about that teaching because that is really us today. We are still in exactly the same, in exactly the same story. The water we have today is the same water as 100 million years ago. They aren't making new water. I don't think you count the melting of the polar ice caps as making new water. I'm saying it's the same water as the dinosaurs. We all drink the same water. We all breathe the same air. We all eat from the same Mother Earth. And so this is a little bit about that moment in time when you have this opportunity to do great spiritual things and take care of that. So that is a little bit about this story. This is where I live, Gawawi-Egamug. That is, I live on Round Lake in the middle of the White Earth Reservation. That's where I was this morning. And, as I was telling the students before, our ancestors all traveled and navigated with the stars, right? And today we're kind of a far cry from that. Most of us don't go outside without our GPS, right? And sometimes I wonder what our descendants will think of us if we are in fact smarter. But all our ancestors were pretty smart, but I did use the GPS and get here today. It was a fabulous road trip. I have no idea where I was, but it was awfully fun getting here. But this is some art from our territory, and you're all a pretty smart bunch, and so you've seen this kind of art before, but this is Anishinabe Art. And this is a kind of art. The artist here is named Roy Thomas. He's deceased. But it depicts an art form that is, originally on birch bark scrolls, and also throughout the boundary waters. You see some art forms that are something like this. And this particular piece, you could see inside the beings. And this is a certain way of Anishinaabe art that is depicted. And I bring this up to you because when I was an undergraduate at Harvard, if you wanted to study the art from Europe, you went to the Fine Arts department. But if you wanted to study Native art, you went to anthropology. And so what I just want to say is there's this valuation of knowledge that occurs in that. And it occurs in academic institutions where indigenous knowledge systems are not valued as highly as knowledge systems that come out of Europe and come out of the church. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that it is possible that the answer to the problems we have today is not in the paradigm which created those problems. We might want to just take a breath and figure out how to work together to make things better. And each of us, and there are many different ways that we can work together to do that. This piece is called We Are All in the Same Boat. We are all in the same boat. And really it is true that we are all in the same boat. So this is my territory, my neck of the woods. This is our wild rice. This is what I just came from. My partner Don and I knocked some rice up there, but this is Mono-Minakay-Geesis, the wild rice-making moon. And this is the only place in the world that this great, great plant lives. And so I think about that a lot because where we live, you can drink the water from a lake. We can still drink the water from a lake. We can get sugar from a tree. You can get wild rice from our lakes. I feel like that's a pretty good gig. You really don't want to mess that one up, right? In the world that we live in, there are very few places with such wealth and such beauty. And so that is why I'm a water protector, because I know that water is life, and that water is how it is that we will protect that. So now I want to talk a little bit about making America great again. This is my idea of when America was great. when there were 8,000 varieties of corn. That's tremendous agrobiodiversity. And that corn, those corn varieties, corn doesn't exist in nature. It's called teosinte, and it's a grass. You cannot eat it as such. Well, I guess you can eat it, but the corn varieties that we know were all adapted from teosinte. And so I think about corn a lot, for a number of reasons, but I want to say that corn is an example of something that humans do with the plant in relationship. And I say that because I'm probably, maybe I'm exceptional to you all, but I feel like that sometimes I wake up and I'm like, humans sure make a mess. No other species makes the mess humans make, right? And then I look at corn and I say, that was a pretty good job, we did that one. We worked that one out. So I just it's a reaffirming thing. But this is when there was tremendous agrobiodiversity. And as the people who made and collected most of these seeds and developed these varieties, a lot of them were women. And on a worldwide scale today, women continue to be many of the people who produce the food. But in terms of the indigenous community in the Western Hemisphere, a lot of us were the seed savers and the ones that collected the 8,000 varieties, and that was before Monsanto. That was before Syngenta, before all those smart guys who knew all that stuff. Because in order to figure out if the seed, not only did it, that if it tasted good, that's always a good one, right? If it keeps well, if it weathers well through different things, that's a lot of knowledge, and that is the knowledge that we have. So 8,000 varieties of corn. America was great when there were 50 million buffalo. That's when America was great. Single largest migratory herd in the world, spanned an area covered with 250 separate varieties of grass. Tremendous biodiversity. America was great when passenger pigeons blackened the skies, and when you could drink the water from every stream, and every creek, and every lake. That's when America was great. And that is, I believe, our spiritual opportunity to do our best to restore those things, to restore that covenant and that agreement. And I think of that and that time and how beautiful that time is, and I also think about what that means for this present moment, which later I will, talk a little bit more about. And this is a little bit of that conflict, right? Two very separate worldviews. That came into being. And, this is a graphic by Wotan again. So this is what we know. I refer to this as Windigo Economics. But in our teachings as Anishinaabe, we were told that there was this time called the time of the seventh fire. Our prophets came to us long ago. Our prophets instructed us where to live and how to behave, and they also told us what was going to happen to us. And they, everybody has prophets. I'm not a Christian, as you've likely gathered that, but, people have instructions. And our prophets told us that this time would come known as the time of the seventh fire, and in that time we were told that we would have a choice between two paths. And one path, they said, would be well-worn, but it would be scorched. And the other path would not be well-worn, and it would be green, and it would be our choice upon which path to embark. And I'm pretty sure that that is not just about Anishinaabe people. I'm pretty sure that that's all of us in North America and on this worldwide scale. And so you are familiar with the scorched path because that is where we live. That is the world that we live in, and this is an example of it, the extraction. And I refer to this as Windigo Economics. I'm an economist by training, but a Windigo is an Anishinaabe term for this cannibal or this monster that would plague our people in the winter time. A spirit being but that would just consume you. And my people, I was reading this summer, we have a long history of battling Windigos. We have a long history of battling them. Other nations have histories of fighting monsters. But I think of what a cannibal, the term Windigo refers to, is a cannibal as well. And if you destroy your mother, if you consume your source of life, are you not a Windigo? And to me, the economic systems that we have developed in this country and on a worldwide scale as replicated are what I refer to as Windigo Economics. And this is what it looks like in the tar sands. Having seen that abysmal, egregious behavior of my own. And then this is what it looks like on the land. Now, this is actually a picture from Fort McMurray fire 3 years ago, I believe. But, we are living in a time of catastrophes of biblical proportions. Last year, the entire West Coast was on fire. The hurricanes that are hitting, the torrential storms that are hitting are destroying not only infrastructure, but just laying to waste. To the south, we have these storm systems of unknown proportion. To the west, we have fires. To the north, we have fires, and we also have the melting of the ice. And to the east, to the best of my knowledge, we have a crazy man with orange hair who's screaming at the rest of the world. We have catastrophes of biblical proportions that are around us now. And in that moment, to my best knowledge, it would be best to summon up your courage and figure out what we're going to do. And to really just take a breath and say, yeah, that's going on. I'm fully aware, because I live in the same country that you are, that most people go from their little box that they look at all day on their computer or on their phone into their air-conditioned house, to their air-conditioned car, watch whatever they want to, and live in some sort of serious denial, right? But if you are coherent, if you are at all present, if you take a breath and hold your head up, you know that now be the time to be courageous. Now be the time to do the right thing. So this is the price tag. And Munich Re, the world's largest reinsuring agency, about a decade ago predicted that by the year 2020, we'd be spending 20% of world GDP on climate change-related disasters. Now, that's the world's largest reinsuring company. Now, since all those guys in California whose houses got burned, a lot of them are getting new insurance on the same houses. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Who's going to pay for all this? That's kind of my question. Like, what little, my reservation is not ready for climate change related disaster. We don't have a fund for infrastructure disaster. No country, no county, none of us are prepared for these costs, and also the power outages and the implications, So all I know is that in climate change, things are likely to not go well, for our infrastructure, and the economic consequences of their behavior is egregious. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more later about I did not choose to fight Enbridge. I didn't choose to spend 7 years fighting the largest pipeline company in the world, but that's what we're doing here in Minnesota. And so, this is an example of kind of the economics of this analysis. That's to say, if you bring in, 170 million metric tons of carbon annually, how much does that cost to get out of the atmosphere, right? You guys are studying in school, and I have just been through the policy arena of Minnesota, and I'm thinking your math is a little bit short on some of these issues. We really need to look at the implications of some of these larger catastrophes in the scorched earth. And then there's the social catastrophe of this era and time. Now, this era, of catastrophes of biblical proportions is also an era known as the era of extreme extraction. And that's to say that, over the past 100 years, been a lot of mining, been a lot of building of empires, built a lot of, cutting of trees, built a lot, just keep going. And then you get to this point in time where it's not so easy anymore. It's not so easy to get that stuff. So you take oil, for instance. It used to just kind of like gush out of the ground, right, down there in Oklahoma, right? No, nothing is like that anymore. We already got all that easy stuff. So everything that's left, whether it is oil, they call it peak oil. At a certain point, everything that's easy is gone. Everything that's left, that's going to cost some bucks to get that one, right? And it becomes this extreme extraction. And it's not just oil, it's rare minerals. It's the polybent mine, less than 1% ore. 1% ore for that mining operation. That's the extreme extraction. Y'all follow me in this? And then oil. What extreme extraction means in a fossil fuel era, it's kind of like I'm an addict. Y'all are addicts too, just, I'm a fossil fuel addict. I spent my whole life in the fossil fuel era. What I want is a let's call it kind of a graceful transition. You're going to have to make a transition at some point. So I'm kind of for the graceful transition plan. I think that'd be good. And so being an addict, though, you don't think about that. You just think about how you're going to get your fix. And I know because I live in the same era. We live in a highly energy-intensive United States. We have a whole bunch of extraction. We got a whole bunch of inefficient materials production. We got, a whole bunch of energy that's wasted between point of origin and point of consumption, and we got kind of the end of the barrel. So how you know that you're at the end and you got a problem with your addiction, is when you do something like the remaining fossil fuels are hard to get, so you do extreme stuff like blowing off the top of 500 mountaintops in Appalachia and acting like that's normal to do, right? Or maybe another example is deep water drilling, right? And that's all good that you can go 20,000 leagues under. That's just awesome that you can do all that stuff, But it's all good until the Deepwater Horizon, right? Just because you're super clever doesn't mean it's going to work out. So it's extreme extraction when you got to go to the bottom of the ocean. Like, my personal feeling is only mermaids should be there. It's my scientific opinion, right? Sticking with it, The extreme extraction is fracking, blowing up the bedrock of Mother Earth, putting 602 chemicals down. You don't have to report because of the Energy Policy Act of 2005, written by Dick Cheney. Under the assumption that what goes down will not come up. That's always good, huh? Just gonna be work out, keep pumping that stuff down there, it'll work out. Y'all know it's not working out, right? And then extreme extraction is the tar sands. Taking some stuff that basically looks like, sand or tar or whatever, and figuring out how to shove it in some pipelines. Extreme behavior is what addicts do, right? I have addicts in my family, and they just, they rationalize their behavior. They tell you, it's usually my fault, it's like your fault, but they they do all kinds of bad stuff, and that's where we are. And this is what it looks like socially. This is Standing Rock. There's a lot of pictures I got of Standing Rock, and some of you just saw that movie, Eagle and the Condor. But my point is that at what point in your society do you do this for an oil company? Do you fire upon unarmed water protectors, demonize them, arrest 800 of them, putting them in dog kennels in Cass County? And what is that for? A pipeline. So my point is that addictions and extreme behavior in fossil fuels also makes for bad civil society. You do bad stuff to your own people, in order to enforce the brutality of your pipeline projects. And then you have this. This is the story of man camps. This is the Bakken. This wasn't put up by some Native women. This was put up by, some people out of Minnesota who lost their girl up there in a man camp, right? This is a billboard that was up there, up there by, up there in the western part of North Dakota. And then this is what it looks like in terms of the implications for women, And so from my perspective, it's like, I don't want to participate in any more ugly behavior. I want to be part of the society that values life, values water. I want to be part of a society that says, 50 years from now, what's it going to be like here? Where's your water going to come from here? Where's your food going to come from? Who's in charge of that? What are you going to be thinking in your education system? How many of your people are going to be in prison? What's the status of women going to be? What's your quality of health going to be? I want to be part of figuring out what that looks like. And I feel like a lot of people would like that too. Because being a victim is a painful thing. It's a painful thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about tar sands, and then we're going to get to the happy part of the lecture, okay? You just have to share my PTSD of 7 years with me for a moment here, okay? So, Canada has the dirtiest oil in the world, $83 a barrel. It's about $43 a barrel out of the Permian Basin right now in Texas. And in order to get that oil to market, it's all landlocked, right? So they got to do something. So for the past 8 years with the Koch brothers, who until recently owned most of the assets in the oil fields, most of the tar sands largest owners of resources up there was the Koch brothers. They was trying to get these pipelines out, right? So there were 5 pipelines 2 years ago. It's one northern one there with those dots. That was called Energy East. That pipeline was intended to go from Alberta, you see how landlocked it is, to Montreal. Never got approval by the National Energy Board. Second pipeline, Enbridge's Northern Gateway pipeline. That was intended to go, as you see, to that northwest, really nice, really nice fishing port, Kitimat. Never received approval by the National Energy Board, leaving 3 pipelines, right? So these 3 pipelines are the blue one over there is called the Trans Mountain. I refer to that as Trudeau West. This purple one here is of course the KXL, and this green one here is these are 2 versions of KXL, and this green one here is line 3, which then continues all the way up here. So this is a little bit of the lay of the land, but the lay of the land, like how it is envisioned by oil companies, is not actually how it works out. So every one of those pipelines faces massive opposition. 2 of them never got approval of the National Energy Board. This pipeline, known as the Trans Mountain Pipeline, fought heavily in Canada in the courts and in the streets in British Columbia. Nobody really wants it in British Columbia, and the First Nations don't want that pipeline either. The Kinder Morgan, the Texas company, tried to get approval, said, oh, this is like too much. I said to Canada, we're backing out until y'all figure it out. And then the Canadian government purchased that pipeline from Kinder Morgan for $4.5 billion, leaving Kinder Morgan about a 400% profit on their pipeline. The day after Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister, purchased that pipeline, the Canadian federal court in British Columbia ruled that all permits were null and void because they had not consulted the First Nations. So that was what happened to that pipeline. It was called Kinder Morgan, but as I said, I call it Trudeau West. And so he's sitting there trying to figure out what you do with the pipeline without permits. Kind of a problem. So he's trying to come up with the end run, which is unbelievable. He created he got some tribes to sign on, and so they have a pipeline project in Canada now known as the Reconciliation Pipeline Project. You couldn't make up this stuff, really couldn't make up this stuff. It just happens in Canada, right? Keystone is stuck in court, but we will see how that goes. That's a big battle. Keystone was defeated, as you may remember, did not receive approval under the Obama administration, and then Trump came back with his magic wand of fairy dust and said, I'm going to do everything because I'm president, and you can't actually do that. There are a couple of laws that we are hoping will keep stopping him. That is in courts. That is a challenge, but this biggest one is the Line 3, and that is Enbridge's. That's the largest tar sands pipeline. And that's the one that is intended to go to Superior, joining 6 other Enbridge pipelines, and then going to the east from there. And my position is, first of all, 6 is enough. I think 6 is a reasonable number of pipelines for any corporation to have. I think 6 is good. Just good. Be happy with that. But Enbridge wants to bust a whole new corridor because they can't put it through their old corridor. And that is where our opposition comes in. Aside from the fact that 915,000 barrels of tar sands oil is not anything that anybody needs right now. That is a hard battle, and that is the battle that we are engaged in here in Minnesota. We first began this battle in 2013 with the Sandpiper, a proposed pipeline that would go through the same territory but was coming out of North Dakota. We fought them for 3 years. For 3 years in the regulatory system in Minnesota. In 2016, the Minnesota courts ruled that the state of Minnesota had to do an environmental impact statement on that proposal. I just want to repeat that one time. The state was court-ordered to do an environmental impact statement on the Sandpiper. Simply stated, I would like a system that works. I feel like you shouldn't have to court-order your state to do an environmental impact statement on a big pipeline project, right? After that pitched battle we had and that decision, Enbridge Company canceled the Sandpiper in 2016 and then bought 28% of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Then they came back with this Line 3, which is what we face now. I passed out some literature on it, but basically I've spent the past 7 years in the regulatory process in Minnesota, hoping that we could make something work. On June 28th of last year, not this year, the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission approved this pipeline, after which point we all sued them, including the state of Minnesota, as some of you may know. The state sued itself over the issuance of the certificate of need. So, I'm like, I hope the system works. That's all I gotta say. But at a certain point, what you realize is that addicts make bad policymakers. And people at some point, the idea that the Enbridge Corporation spent $11 million lobbying and created fictitious organizations that it said were grassroots pro-pipeline organizations. I just really want democracy to work. And I feel like you shouldn't be able to make up that that's a real organization, and you shouldn't be able to spend $11 million. So this is what it looks like on the ground this is the ground in the ground in British Columbia, the opposition to the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And this is what it looks like in Minnesota and Duluth. We're water protectors. We're water protectors. A lot of us were at Standing Rock. A lot of us were injured at Standing Rock. I was not injured or arrested, but my family was. And so we've been there. And so to me, this question is the question that, I took to heart from Standing Rock is I believe, and I'm going to stand by the facts, that the rights of a corporation should not supersede the rights of people. The law in this country says that corporations are considered natural persons under the law. And as such, they have rights which enabled them to do things like Citizens United, recognizing their right to act as people. And, you're an intelligent bunch. A corporation is not a person because a person has a soul. A corporation is a fictitious creation. And what I want is laws that recognize the rights of nature and the rights of people and not the rights of corporations. So this is my latest Enbridge event. This is the Enbridge shareholders meeting. And me and Charlotte, there's like 15 guys screaming at us, lay that pipe, lay that pipe. May 9th, in Calgary, I went up there. And they're all screaming at us, lay that pipe, and I'm just standing there. And I said, I'm not your problem, baby. The tar sands don't work. Most expensive oil in the world, $82 a barrel. You guys need a new plan. In colonial economics and in world politics, they always talk about structural adjustment for third world countries. Y'all heard that? I'm going to help y'all fix up your stuff. You're all messed up down there. We're going to structurally adjust. I would say Canada needs a structural adjustment. They don't have a plan. Their plan is mine. 75% of the world's mining corporations are Canadian. Polymet, Canadian interests. Most of my problems come from Canada. I keep saying, Trump want to do a big wall to the south. I want to do a wall to the north. Keep that dysfunctional stuff up there in Canada. They need a structural adjustment. So this is the structural adjustment. It is referred to as the Green New Deal. I prefer to refer to this as the Sitting Bull plan. And that's because Sitting Bull, the great political leader, said, let us put our minds together to see what kind of future we can make for our children. Let us put our minds together to see what kind of future we can make for our children. Because there is not like a social change fairy that's going to fix this one for us. There's not like some, gleaming hope of a politician. Transformation is made through people, through communities, through commitment, and it doesn't happen overnight. Most of us are conditioned to, watch a television show that lasts 48 minutes and the problem is solved. That ain't real. Mr. Bresnahan is here and he has 260 years of clay dug for his operations, right? He's thinking ahead, right? That's what I'm saying is like this stuff, it's going to take a little while to fix that stuff and to stop them from doing any more dumb stuff. Spent a lot of time trying to stop them from doing dumb stuff. We've stopped a lot of dumb stuff. Sometimes I want to give a tour, the dumb stuff that could have happened tour. I mean, there's a lot of dumb stuff. You know what I'm saying? If you just go out there, Minnesota's got like, my favorite is that town of Palisade, and that, what was it, the experimental city of 250,000 people they were going to put under a dome over by Palisade? That's a dumb idea. I mean, it's like, where did they come up with those dumb ideas, you know? I raised too many children. I'm just like, no, don't do that. It's dumb. So it's called the Green New Deal. Here's some of our bright stars. Now, I just want to say the 2018 election was pretty important. I think 2020 is even going to be more important, y'all. So get out the vote. Get out the vote. Because they're going to be busy trying to suppress the vote. You could be sure of that. And if you want to actually have a shot at a little less insanity out there, a little less hating, time to get out the vote. That's how these people got elected, you know? So people say you can't meet present demand with renewable energy. I hear that all the time, you know? Well, why would you want to meet present demand would be my question. So this is a little chart. I have the 2008, and I believe I have the, 2017 chart from Lawrence Livermore Lab. Those are some left-wing guys, huh? Anyway, so what they point out here is basically the amount of energy that we waste, rejected energy between point of origin and point of consumption in 2008 was 57%. Wasted energy between point of origin and point of consumption. So there's those really old coal strip mines and those 80-year-old coal generators up there on the Iron Range. That's some wasted energy. By the time they get that stuff out of the ground in Montana and they haul it over here by rail, you know, anybody who's in physics class knows that you just start losing more and more energy along the way. And that's the way the whole system's set up, plus it's some old damn stuff, right? And so that was then. And then everything, by the time you go, you know, pull your light there, you know, I mean, anybody travel other country, you know that like a lot of countries, you got a ghost load in these walls, always on call. Other countries have like a little switch to turn on the lights when you go in the room. Why you need to have a why do you got to have a load on call all the time, Mr. America? 24/7 ready to plug in your little thing any moment? You see what I'm saying? Immense amounts of wasted energy. The system is set up that the more you consume, the more money they get. That's not a way to set up a system if you want to survive. Consuming more does not make your life better. It's going to make your life a lot worse. And every American knows that. You know, now we're in this society where we spend all our time buying stuff. What, 70% of this economy is shopping? Buying stuff? We just buy stuff. We don't make stuff, we just buy stuff, right? And are we a lot better off? No, we're not a very happy country. Now we spend all this time filling those really excellent barns of Stearns County with junk. Boats. You know what I'm saying, right? Like we don't even have animals in our barns anymore. We have stuff. We have stuff. I was like, wow, and we spend a lot of time protecting our stuff and watching our stuff and moving our stuff. Wow, but pack rats. And it's not getting better. 66% by 2017. So my point is why would you want to meet present demand? How about you try to get efficient and quit doing dumb stuff, like go like Germany, be all efficient and stuff, right? So, you know, this is a little bit of the math of the job creations for renewables, for subsidies for renewables, how much money you get from a subsidy from renewables versus fossil fuels, how much has the most jobs. You know, it is really important to me that this generation, in fact, all of us, actually have a sense, like, just because they tell you the lie enough times doesn't mean that it's true. You know? Like weapons of mass destruction. Like, how many times do you say it? Renewable energy, you know, you're going to freeze in the dark. I'm like, I don't know about that. Just because they say it doesn't mean it's true. And it's really important to me to start, you know, recovering and rethinking and becoming, I refer to this as the Renaissance. We need a Renaissance. We need enlightened thinkers. You know, the Kool-Aid didn't do us much good. It's time to be the enlightened thinkers that are needed to make something beautiful. So this is our little project up on the White Earth Reservation. This is called Eighth Fire Solar. I passed out some flyers on it, and I live up there in these communities that basically nobody cares about us. I'll just go with that. No politician makes an effort. Don't really care about those reservations, those tribal people in the north. We aren't a rich tribe with a big casino. We're like the 20,000, really pissed off people from White Earth. We're an unruly bunch. I love us. We're great at tribal meetings. I saw our tribe close down a meeting here this week. I was like, wow. Looks like, anyway, we'll leave that one. But, so the point is that I feel like if we can do it, anybody can do it. That's my point. It's like we looked around my community, and I'm 60 years old. I spent 40 years of my life trying to do things right, and I lived on my reservation since 1982. And I look around, and you're trying to get some justice, someone to work, quit stealing your land. You're trying to get some environmental justice. You're trying to get, the tribal government to do something. And then you're looking around like nobody's doing anything. And so at a certain point, I was like, well, looks like it's us. Let's just do it. Because you could wait for someone to fix something, but it's just probably not going to happen. And quit saying someone should, and just do it. So, we spend a lot of time looking at these issues, and fuel poverty is a really big issue in Minnesota. One thing is for sure, it's going to be a cold winter. How cold, I don't know. But we all got ourselves set up for a great deal of insecurity with fuel. Most of us are on severe fossil fuel. A lot of people got fossil fuels in their house. In my reservation, people are trying to figure out how to pay their heating bills. It's called fuel poverty, heating or eating. And it occurs across the North Country, and it occurs all across not just Native people, but poor people in the North. And so what if you could figure out how to reduce a little bit of that poverty? So our thinking is that solar thermal panels, this is our people, this is us building them. We put them up, and then this year we started building them. We were buying them. We said, might as well manufacture our own, employ our own people. And so that thing there, this is in my village at Pine Point. That's one of my sons there on the left. This thing here has it's about 8 by 4, and it's got, it's got a cover of plexiglass, and then the heat gets in, and it's dark inside, and when it heats up to a certain 90-degree temperature, the thermostat turns on a blower fan and blows the hot air into your house. It can save up to 20% of your heating bills. Add some weatherization. Who wouldn't want to do something like that? Reduce your heating bill by 20%. That's what I mean. And so for me, this is kind of our low-hanging fruit. This is who makes it. This is our team. This is my dog. I don't know, my one son, he's trying to be absent. There's my other dog over there. But this is who does it, some of our friends are there visiting us. But a bunch of guys from my community, a bunch of young guys, basically build these things. And like I said, you put them on the south-facing wall, reduces your heating bill by about 20%. And to me, that's what energy security is about. Is figuring out how to not be all stressed out all winter time. Our tribes have great potential for renewable energy. This is what energy justice looks like. Over the past 50 years, 4 of the 10 largest coal strip mines in the country were on Indian reservations. 2/3 of the uranium mines on Indian reservations. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the tar sands, indigenous places, indigenous territories. So what about instead if we would do something really, really revolutionary, right? And instead support renewables in Indian country. That's our idea. Most of these tribes have class 7 wind, class 4. Western Minnesota has class 4 wind. We have a few projects, but the potential is great to have it, especially like wind, solar, hybrid projects. Excellent potential for that. And then this is the most innovative idea that I've heard lately, which is called solutionary rail. Solutionary rail. Now, it turns out that our country has a rail system that would be an embarrassment to Bulgaria. Right? We don't have a rail system that's a functioning. How many of you have been to Europe and been on the rails and systems in Europe, right? Now, doesn't that seem like awesome and normal? You know, and then you come back here and like, you guys used to have a rail stop right here, right? Do you still have a rail stop here? No. You know what I mean? And so, I would have liked to take a train. I would like to take a train. They used to have this thing called the Galloping Goose up here. Anybody ever hear of that? Like it went to all of like these northern, resorts. Because people don't actually need a car, they need transportation, right? And so this idea is you take the rails and you electrify them, And it turns out that, a diesel engine, if you think about it in energy terms of physics, rubber on the road versus metal on metal, which you think is more efficient? Metal on metal. Rubber on the road is not an efficient way in terms of energy to do anything, right? And so what you want to do is to figure out if you're going to move stuff around, how to do it in a somewhat efficient manner. And that would be this metal on metal. And then you would move from a combustion engine to an electric engine. Now, why would you want to do that? I'll give you an example. The vehicle I drove down here in had a combustion engine. I got a bunch of combustion engines. What I really want is an electric engine. And why do I want that? Because a combustion engine is 16% efficient. You put the fuel in, and then every part in there moves and uses some of that energy. The drivetrain, the wheels, everything uses some of that energy until, in the end, it's only 16% efficient. You know how efficient an electric engine is? 65% efficient. It's the same thing with rails. Why wouldn't you want to be more efficient? You would want to do that thing, right? And so this is what it could look like. There's a lot of First Nations tribes that have been impacted heavily by these railroads. And so to me, justice looks like you get, those right-of-ways should be returned to tribes because those right-of-ways are through our territories. And then renewable energy could come from those tribes. And then look who's us. I know, don't you I'm like, why did we do that? Every day I was like, that doesn't look smart, huh? So my point is like, there's a set of choices that were made that were bad choices. And now we need to begin to transform into systems that are going to work over the longer haul, more efficient. And this solutionary rail is this idea of powering an electric rail line off of renewables, using the grid and using the corridors of the rail to power as the electric grid. And so it's a distributed energy. It's collected and distributed. This is one of my friends, Winona Leduc, and she lived in the middle of the tar sands in this village called Little Buffalo. I spent some time living in the north, and it's beyond colonialism. It's abuse. Canada is abusive. Until this year, there was 151 water advisories out for those First Nations. Their water was not drinkable, right? They don't have infrastructure for people, they have infrastructure for oil companies. And that's what's wrong, is you need infrastructure for people, not infrastructure for oil companies. Just ask Flint, Michigan. It's not that I don't like pipes, it's just that I want pipes that carry water. Infrastructure for people, not for oil companies, right? So this woman, this village, their electrical generation system is non-existent. They had a diesel generator for their health clinic, for their little village in the tar sands. Like, that's all super backwards, right? And so what did she do? Her master's thesis from the University of Victoria, I get to be on her master's committee. Her master's thesis is she put up 20 kilowatts of solar. She didn't just write about it, she did it. That's cool, huh? Powered her health clinic in her little village. 20 kilowatts of solar. And so then this is me. I was like, we're going to do 20 kilowatts of solar and power our little school. So this is our village, Pine Point Village, right behind our kids' elementary school. And that was like, hey, Melina, I'm going to try to do that too. Doesn't look quite so cool, but we did it, right? And now my tribe is going to do 200 kilowatts of solar. We're going to put up 5 40-kilowatt solar gardens on our reservation. You know, we would like to wait for someone to do that, those rural co-ops, but they aren't going to do that. Those rural co-ops are still all addicted to North Dakota coal. And we're not. We're going to move on. And then we're going to build these this is called a microgrid, or these local grids, right? Now I share this with you because, as I said, my theory is if we could do it, what about you, right? We're the people that nobody bets on. But we're the people that know that our destiny is going to be best determined by us, not by somebody else. This is solar at Navajo. This is the Kayenta project, 27 megawatts. Nice job, huh? Closing down coal-fired generators, putting up solar. And then this is the happy part of the lecture, the last part of the happy part. So I'm a hemp grower. My partner, Don, do you want to give the wave, Don? My partner, Don, he's also wearing his hemp shirt today. I would get him to model, but he's a little shy about that. But my partner, Don, and I have been hemp farmers with Minnesota-issued permits for hemp for 4 years. And our interest is in fiber hemp. And there were 7 people who applied for permits the first year, and now there's over 500 people with permits. A lot of people are particularly interested in CBD varieties. You know, I can't grow anything with THC in it. Like, you know, you can smoke my whole field and you can't get high, you know? People are all, you know, it's probably some of your relatives, these conservative people, they're like, yeah, Winona, I heard that you're all, I mean, there's a marijuana farm over there by Osage. I was like, yeah, right, guys. Come on out, give it a try. But I'm interested in textile hemp. Why? Because the word canvas comes from the word cannabis. And at one point, Minnesota had 11 hemp mills. We made all our own fabric here in Minnesota. We made all our own rope. And you just think of something like, if you're going to move into the post-fossil fuels economy, how about if you moved out of the textile industry that's full of toxins, right? You know, so for instance, most of us are wearing something that is cotton. 24% of the world's agricultural chemicals, 4% of the world's agriculture. Cotton. 24% of the world's agricultural chemicals. 5 times the water of hemp. And what else are we wearing? A bunch of stuff made by oil companies, right? Polyester, lycra, spandex. So the post-fossil fuel economy means you want to move on. You want to move into stuff that doesn't kill the planet. So hemp has 3 times the tensile strength of cotton, uses 1/5 of the water, doesn't require any agricultural chemicals, and can help in both restoration of the earth, restoration of ecosystems. That's our farm. Winona's hemp. That's our hemp crop. There's Don right there. This is my sons. These 2 are my sons. I got a nephew, and that's Ronnie, who I work with. He's like my brother. That's what fiber hemp looks like. And that's our crop from last year on our tribal hemp field. And so our intention is to build a hemp mill. That's what we want to do. But first we started by buying a decorticator, which you got to take that and decorticate it. I'd buy that from China. What it cost us, $2,200? Something like that. And then huge amount. Like, we don't make anything anymore, right? Finding a decorticator was like trying to find a unicorn. You know, you gotta look around all over the country, and there was like, oh, there's this open patent. This guy is doing it. We looked everywhere. Finally, the Chinese, because that's where all the hemp comes from. So we become friends with Smiley. That's her name, at the Chinese, machine production factory. So we got that. And now we just got a rope making machine. There's me and our hemp crop last year. I look really stoned. I'm not. It was funny though, because there's a complaint from the neighbors to the tribe. They were complaining about my noxious weeds. And I went out there and I said, what, the 8-foot tall hemp plants? Let me tell you, they don't call it weed for nothing. That stuff can grow anywhere. I think I've redistributed hemp throughout Becker County at this point. It's all good. It's all good. There's a little bit of the facts on it, right? I just told you all that. But just think if we could, you know, those boats. What if we quit covering those boats with plastic and covered them with canvas or made of hemp again? That'd be kind of cool unto itself, right? That's how you change things. This is what it's all about. It's our wild rice. It's me and Don Goodwin looking at Big Rice Lake, which opened today on White Earth. It's the mother lode of wild rice, and that's why we fought that pipeline company up, and we continue to fight them, because you can't have oil in your water and have wild rice. It's the only place in the world that grows. It's not a commodity. It can't be replaced with white rice in a bag. It's food for the spirit, and it's food for the belly. And Creator intended for us to be with our rice. That's all rice. That's cool, huh? That's Big Rice Lake. And you go out there with 2 sticks in a canoe, and you bring it in, and you knock it into your boat, and then you bring it in, and you lay it out to dry, and then you parch it over a fire. Pretty much the same technology my ancestors, our old people did, you know, almost 10,000 years. Think about that, 10,000 years of the same economy. Now that's a sustainable economy, right? So I just think Minnesota should keep that. How do we do that? I don't got no easy answers. I was going to say, this is my hemp rope. I just want to say this is my new knitting project. I call it my knitting. Just sit there and twine hemp. This is Evo Morales. You know, we need to transform the economy into something that is local, that is not dependent on fossil fuels, doesn't poison us, doesn't end up where all our food is produced with something that ends with "side." You know, at a certain point, I think we all recognize that the words pesticide, fungicide, and herbicide have the same suffix as suicide, homicide, and genocide. And maybe you don't want to put all that side stuff on your food, because you're all going to end up in that Roundup problem we got now, right? So what if you went and we reaffirmed our covenant, our rights, our recognition of Mother Earth? So Bolivia, this is Evo Morales, the president of Bolivia, it's the first country to recognize the rights of Mother Earth as a part of their constitution. Ecuador also. The rights of Mother Earth to continue to exist, to be free of genetic contamination, to be free of pollution, to be able to regenerate. The rights of Mother Earth. The rights of Mother Earth should supersede the rights of corporations. That's an enlightened public policy. Our tribe passed the rights of wild rice on December 31st of last year, recognizing that wild rice is bigger than all of us and had this right to continue to exist. So it is not only a transforming economically, but it is over time transforming the public policy institutions. You know, other countries have done it. New Zealand or Aotearoa has recognized the rights of a river and a mountain, as has India. You know, and we have recognized the rights of wild rice. Public policy and institutions are a function of society. Civil society needs to be healthy. And we need to be healthy in our policy. Is it possible to make change? Yes. As I said, there's no social change theory, but you know, in the transformation from a caterpillar through the chrysalis to this butterfly, it's called metamorphosis, right? Now there's these cells which appear, and those cells are called imago cells. And those first cells appear, and they transform. The butterfly does something that no other species do. They liquefy themselves in that chrysalis to be recreated. Like other things like do all this cool nymph stuff, or I don't know, they do all this other cool stuff, but those guys totally transform. And the cells which do this are called imago cells. And the first ones appear and they're like killed off. Next bunch appears and they're like killed off. Next ones appear, killed off. And they keep coming back until they transform that caterpillar into this butterfly. The imago cells is what they are called. The cells that transform. Imago is the same root as the root for the word imagination. Imagination. Humans can do something that nothing else, no other species can do, is we can imagine. We can imagine what is beautiful. We can imagine what is right. We have some gifts, and we are the social imago cells of this society. And that is what we will be, and that's what we will continue to be. Change happens, as I said, not by a social change theory, but by the hands and prayers of individuals. That is how change is made. And there are many different ways to make change. Everybody has their own gifts. But in this moment that we are in, we look back, and there is the teachings for us. That agreement passed in 1712 between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee said 1 dish, 1 spoon. And in 2019, I tell you that we have 1 dish and 1 spoon. We all eat from the same land, Oma King. We all drink the same water. And it is best to treat each other as if that is possible. Do I believe it is possible? For sure. This is a squash I grow. This squash is called, this squash came from an archaeological dig. The story that I heard is that there was an archaeological dig near Green Bay, Wisconsin, and in that archaeological dig, they found this ball, and they shook the ball, and in it there was some seeds. And they carbon dated those seeds, and that dig is 800 years old. And those seeds are what grew the squash, right? And then I was corrected. Some scholars said it's really not, it didn't come out of that ball. They're Miami seeds, which is a kind of native person from the Ohio River Valley, and they're 1,000 years old. So I'm just going with they're old squash, right? I don't know. I just know that they're old. And so then I started talking about the squash. Someone gave me this squash seeds to grow, and I didn't grow them for a while, and then I started growing them, and I started talking about them because I talk to everybody like this, and I was talking about my squash, and someone said, "What's that called? What's that called?" And I said, I don't know what it's called. I was just given the seeds. And they're like, "Well, what's it called?" And I said, "Well, white guys name stuff all the time." Right? Isn't that right? All busy naming everything, mountains, rivers, John Brook Stream or whatever. I was like, all kinds of stuff. I named after my brother. I named this one here. They just busy naming everything. Stars. So I said, I'm going to name this. This squash is called Gete Okosibin, which means really cool old squash. And how you know you have arrived? I don't know if any of you are farmers, but the Baker seed catalog, the whole seed catalog this year features Gete Okosibin. Thank you. We have arrived. But this squash has 1,600, I don't know, we counted them one time. Well, let's put it, some students counted it because they were all OCD. 1,600 seeds. Is that not about possibility? See, to me, that's what plants teach you. It is about hope, commitment, love, possibility, life. Right? Be the seed. Be the seed. And then finally, I just want to say thank you for having me here. And I want to say that Corey and a number of other students here helped us prepare something called the Welcome Water Protectors Campaign. And so for those of you, I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. And as I have said, I am hoping that the system works for the people in the lakes of Minnesota and that no Line 3 goes ahead. I really want the system to work. I'm 60 years old, but I am not afraid. I'm not afraid. And so we invite you to come to the North. We hope the system works, but we are prepared to visit the North in large numbers. And after all, this is not North Dakota, this is Minnesota, and we all go to the North anyway, don't we? So we have prepared, we are launching it in about a week, an entire website that shows you excellent places to camp along the 300 miles of proposed line that is coming to Minnesota. It will not come, but there is excellent camping, should you care to see the line, and to just enjoy the North Country. I kind of think of it You know that song, that Joni Mitchell song, "You Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone"? Well, we're going to keep it, but it's always good to see it. You know, see where Itasca Park is. The pipeline goes about 2 miles from the headwaters, proposed. Come see those beautiful places and join us. So we're going to have on our website, Welcome Water Protectors. This is a big billboard up by Park Rapids. Remember, our water is life, and miigwech. Thank you again for your time. Thank you so much. We're going to take about 15 minutes of questions. There's definitely some literature on the back, or go to our website if you want to know more. Order your solar panels right away.
If anyone has questions, there's a microphone so I could run it around to folks. You have a question? Oh.
Hi, good evening. I'm curious if you could speak a little bit more about land reparations from an indigenous or native perspective, please.
Yeah, I would love to. So I spent 20 years of my life working and directed the White Earth Land Recovery Project. 25 years. Because my reservation, Medicine Chest of the Ojibwe, is 837,000 acres, of which about 80,000 acres is held by my tribe. 90% of my land is held by non-Indians. The state, federal, and county governments hold a third of the reservation, taken illegally. You know, it's really hard to tell your kids not to steal, right? And the state, county, and federal government stole that land from us. So the easiest solution in the case of my reservation is to return the federal, state, and county land holdings. That's what reparations looks like to me. The only compensation for land is land. You know, and then in the larger picture, you know, that is across the board. Some of the best case studies of that would be like pretty much every national park was carved out of some indigenous territory. You know, and the fact is that we'd be quite well suited to manage and benefit from those national parks. We got that one, you know. And then you look at things like Bears Ears. You know, that was the first national park that was created between the First Nations or the Native people and the federal government. And what's Trump do? Undoes that one. You know, it was like the first kind of the beginning in the park system of something we could do together. You know, and so we would like to see more of that. More of that. And, you know, so it's very, on our reservations, it's very practical. I believe Leech Lake just had 15,000 acres returned to them, stolen in the Chippewa National Forest. And so it's a long process for the reparations and the return of lands, you know, but one, you know, there should be far more returned to our nations. And, you know, as an economist, I feel like, you know, I mean, the fact is that you can't control your economy if you can't control your land base. Land is, you know, trees are clear cut on my reservation, and we do not derive a benefit from that, do we? We don't have a say in what is cut. You know, so that is what I like to see, and a lot of our tribes are in a similar situation. But I point that out to you because in Minnesota, you know, these are Minnesota issues. These are Minnesota issues. You know, reparations are not issues that are someplace else. Every tribe, First Nation in Minnesota has been driven from our land. You know, why there are 35,000 Indian people in Minneapolis is because they are refugees from White Earth, a lot of them. Single largest tribal, community in Minnesota is White Earth. Refugees, made refugees by 1910, 1920 because of Weyerhaeuser. Frederick Weyerhaeuser and the lumber barons that took our land. So we, the compensation for land is land. And the Green New Deal to me, or also offers this opportunity to have like economic justice. And that has to be a part of this, what reparations looks like. Thanks for your question. Yeah. Other questions, y'all? I'm going to drink some more of this water, which I just dug down for. Run, Corey, run.
What's the name of those solar panels that you guys make?
8th Fire Solar. Could you repeat that? 8th Fire Solar. Yeah. And that's about that prophecy of the 7th fire when you got a time to make a choice between those two paths, right? But what we want to do is make that path for that green, that choice on that green path, and then we want to light that fire of that next economy and that next world. Yeah. And we're just rolling out. We had to build an addition because we can't even manufacture, scale, to the level. I'm pretty proud of our little team. I just sent my son and my nephew out to South Dakota for a solar training, first road trip. I was like, anybody ever been to Pine Ridge here before? I was like, go to Big Bats, take a ride. Going to Oglala. I was like, yeah, tell your kid how to get out there, because there's no GPS at a certain point out on Pine Ridge. I think you might as well turn that one in. It's like, other questions up there? And we did have some more literature and stuff, yeah.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure how to say this, but going off of like land reparations, once the recognized treaty areas are given back to the proper nations, is that enough? Because thinking about it from a certain perspective, all this land was taken. When do you say it's enough? That's always kind of a hard thing for me to think about.
Well, on one hand, I'm a proponent of the one dish, one spoon strategy. We are all here together, but people need to learn how to live here, because people don't know how to live here. They act like they live, we'll go with, I'm a little wound up on some of the decisions that are made. I'm like, oh, that was a bad one. At the same time, just say, I take my 20,000 tribal members and I project that 50 years from now, I'm going to have 60,000 tribal members. I'm making stuff up. Now, how much sugar bush do we need? How much fish do we need? How much lakes do we need? How much rice do we need? How much is on that land? What is... If you understand what I'm saying, that's how I think. Is 7 generations from now, what will my people need? What will my people need? And so, in our treaties, my treaty was created in the 1867 treaty. That's created the White Earth Reservation. But our larger treaty territory of the 1855, we continue to harvest there. We continue to harvest. And so, that is kind of the practice. That's why we reserve that harvesting right within those larger treaty territories. And the state of Minnesota has backed down and no longer arrests Indian people for poaching rice outside of the reservation. They backed down and said that we just have to have a tribal ID to harvest now, which is good. Because it was punitive and insulting, really, to have to get a state ID if you were a tribal person to harvest rice. Because most of our people are pretty low-income people, and the state has never really done much to manage. They made a mess. 42% of the lakes isn't that the figure, something like that, are just so contaminated, right? They ain't even doing a good job, right? all that clear cutting. Those other lakes got that invasive species in them. They got groundwater contamination. It doesn't look like you're all doing a good job, state. Might as well just let the native people work on that one, you know? Got more experience. So it's a complicated, but, you know, I think that the important thing is, like I heard both this gentleman's, you know, reparations, the only compensation for land is land. And then in the larger picture, I think that the danger is, it's not the danger, but I am less into the theoretical than I'm into the practical. And in the North, those, you know, there's people not going anywhere. We just need to figure out how to work this out, you know, work this out. And that's gonna take some time, you know. Our rice parchers are non-Indian on my reservation. Well, one of them is. Well, we was just over at his house. I was interviewing him, and he said, you know, he made me laugh because he lived in our community for a long time. He said, my white friends, some of them don't like Indians. My Indian friends, some of them don't like white people. It's like, you know, I said, that sounds like a country western song is what that sounds like, honey. So I told him, I said, but, you know, but he lived there for 3 generations. And, you know, his grandchildren are tribal members. That's what happens. You know, at a certain point, we all kind of like hang out together, right? I was like, that was interesting when he said that to me. He said, my grandchildren are tribal members. They're old, you know, old white people on the reservation, and now they're getting all brown. I'm sorry, I think it's great. Anyway, I don't know if there's another question, and then I just, you know, let you guys hang out some. Yes, my beautiful friend from Alaska.
So how does gender play a role in extreme extraction?
What about extreme extraction?
How does gender play a role in extreme extraction?
How do what? Extreme extraction? Gender? Oh, thank you. I'm hard of hearing too, so. How does gender? Well, it's, you know, I don't know how more explicit than let me shove that pipeline down your throat we could get, huh? Let's just be honest. You know, consent is consent. No consent is no consent. You know, it happens with women and it happens with mega projects. You know, you can't coerce consent and say that it was consent. And so, you know, that is, these projects are, you know, they replicate the dynamics of patriarchal oppression in our territories. And they replicate, you know, they are so destructive to women and to Mother Earth, you know, that we are faced with such egregious, you know, heart-wrenching situations. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I'd say. It's like, you know, I've been to these hearings and it baffles me. You know, North Dakota baffles me. You know, North Dakota is super, their legislature acts like they like women, but they don't like women. Or they wouldn't have increased the recommended daily allowance of radiation by 50 times. You know, if they liked and cared for the health of women, they wouldn't, you know, change those standards, right? If they cared for women, they would, you know, they would not allow the egregious man camps. You know, and then I think, you know, I view this moment as the time for rematriation. That it's time to rematriate. You know, to recover that which will give life. That is to rematriate.
Hi, I was hoping that you would speak a little bit more on the missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Yeah. You know, the statistics across the board indicate that, you know, both the extreme extraction industry and the pipeline industry, the significance that the rise in the missing and murdered women and sex trafficking is significant. You know, I come from a family that lost a woman in the Mississippi. My cousin Tanya was in the Mississippi about 30 years ago. You know, nobody really cared about the Indian women in Minneapolis then. No. You know, they don't actually really now either, right? So, you know, from my perspective, the you know, continued, I mean, whether it is, you know, rape as a weapon of war, or just the taking over and the you know, destruction of women, you know, is maintained by these industries and in the process. You know, they say that a nation's heart is not conquered until the hearts of its women is on the ground. And so, you know, the struggle of Native women to both keep our integrity and our safety is very major, you know, in our communities. And you know, Minnesota has a high rate of missing and murdered women. And I kind of laugh because, like, North Dakota passed legislation in advance of Minnesota. And I was like, wow, how'd North Dakota do that? You know, but that's because an Indian woman there, Ruth Anna Buffalo, you know, got that legislation passed. But, you know, if anybody has watched that case, you know, the case of the Indian woman in Fargo who was brutally murdered and her baby taken, you know, Hoven's life sentence was overturned. I was like, wow, you know. I was like, North Dakota, man, you're a shameful state. So we stay vigilant, you know, on that. We just stay vigilant on that. And, you know, my best answer, like, I spend a lot of my time fighting these guys. You know, but more than that, I think the answer is to make the most beautiful, safe place for women. You know, make a place where, you know, it is good, where you can grow good food and you can have your horses and things are safe. You know, so that is a lot of my work, you know, is really in making that which is beautiful and safe for the women. So thanks for your question, though. Yeah.
So I want to, I think we'll cut it off at that point. And so please join me for thanking Winona again for being here.